Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock, and we have M-Files and Jimmy Newman with us today presenting M-Files and how it powers Salesforce and document-related activities within Salesforce. Jimmy, thank you for joining and presenting today. And if you want to go ahead and get started, I think we're ready for you.
All right, fantastic. I'm just going to share my screen here, Matt, and if you'll confirm that you're seeing it okay, that'd be great.
Yep, I'm looking at an M-Files screen and talking about your footprint in the world we live in.
Yeah, so we're going to dive right into a demo very quickly, but just brief background on M-Files. We are a electronic content management provider in the space. We've got a series of integrations. We're going to talk specifically about Salesforce today, but we literally cover pretty much every inch of the world with our significant footprint, over 9,000 customers, over 300 resellers, similar to the guys we're joining today, who are responsible for supporting our solutions on behalf of our customers, and over 550 employees around the US. You're going to see some things today in our demonstration that we believe make us just a bit different than some of our competitors in the marketplace. Our paradigm is just a bit different when it comes to content management. And what we like to talk about is, where is the best place to store information? And a lot of times whenever you're interacting and operating with content management solutions, you're having to worry about the location of those files and where they're stored, what path they're going to be in. But from an M-Files perspective, we are very metadata centric or keyword centric. It's important to us, the contents of the document and the data that we can garner from those documents that we're presenting. So we really kind of take a what versus where approach. We find that it's faster and easier for end users to adopt a solution, being able to get out and find their content. You're going to see a solution today that will automatically index and organize your content and automatically create relationships, giving you multiple ways to find some of that information, and also ensure that that information is always up to date, never duplicated, and is consistent with the content that you store in not only your M-Files solution and your content management solution, but content that you may have stored over in Salesforce as well. And M-Files is going to give you a solution that provides that single source of truth for your content that's being stored. Security is easily managed and automatic, so we're going to inherit security from either your existing organizational structure and or perhaps maybe your Salesforce implementation. Also going to provide some better accuracy and consistency with auto-naming some of that content. And then we've also got this concept, given our metadata approach, to provide virtual folders so that users can see content in a way that's highly personalized and consistent with the way that they access content on a regular basis. So you'll see some of that today. And we like to use the analogy that, of the iPod or your iPhone or Android device and your music. When you're going into those devices, you don't necessarily know where that song is stored, and perhaps you just want to hear songs from a specific album or from a specific artist, and that is the way M-Files is going to approach the content that we deliver up to you. You're not going to have to worry about where it's stored on that device, or in this case out in the cloud server architecture, but rather what it is and what content is associated, what elements are tagged to it. And so with that, I'm going to end at least the slideshow presentation and just dive right in and take a look at the product suite. We're first going to start at the M-Files product specifically. I'm going to look at what we like to call our desktop client. And with this particular desktop client, this is something that might be locally installed on your workstation and accessed accordingly. We've also got a web and mobile client that you could access as well. But in this dialogue, we've got the ability to reach out and search for content. And I know that I've got a client in my solution that's related to First Mountain Securities. In fact, let's just do a First Mountain search. If I provide that search criteria, M-Files is going to immediately respond with every piece of content where First Mountain is somehow referenced as a part of the metadata structure, and we talked about that a bit earlier. If I take a look at this proposal here, I've got all of the metadata elements that have been tagged and associated to this particular document. These metadata elements might be provided by a user when they're creating content. Perhaps we automatically inherit them through maybe the loading of content from the Salesforce side of things. Or we may use some of our AI tools to automatically index and search out and seek information on that document to provide and populate some of this information. These views and search criteria that you provided here are all entirely individualized and customized per user. We can also publish them out kind of in a manual fashion so that users can see and solicit information off those documents. But again, the power of that metadata hierarchy is going to come into play here if I expand out and maybe look at the relationships to this particular proposal and document. What I'm seeing here is perhaps the customer that's associated to it. In this case, First Mountain Securities is an element that's associated here, and this information actually was pulled in automatically from our Salesforce integration. So being able to reach out into those account contacts and maybe even those opportunity contacts or records inside of Salesforce to automatically replicate and pull the relevant data from those opportunities over so that you can see it not only in M-Files, but we'll take a look at how we see and view that in Salesforce as well. And just to wrap up this view here, obviously I'm just looking at metadata because again, we're very metadata centric and it's kind of foundational to what we do, but obviously you would have access to the contents of those documents as well, along with the full text archive and index of all of the contents within those documents. So all of that's important to understand at our foundation, how you're going to be able to search and retrieve content. Now over here in my other window, I happen to have Salesforce pulled up so we could actually take a look at this account record inside of Salesforce. And if we scroll down, this is all standard Salesforce UI. M-Files is going to provide our embedded UI capabilities so that over within your Salesforce dialog, when we get down here to where that particular M-Files add-in was created, we can see all of the documents that are in this case related to First Mountain Securities. So M-Files and the integration is intelligent enough to recognize the account you're on and go at and intends to sub-filter those results. So in this case, I'm seeing all of the same documents I saw a moment ago related to First Mountain Securities. I have the ability to choose one of those options, see not only the metadata on the object that I've chosen, but also the preview of the document as well, right from within my Salesforce user interface. So the dialogue that we had here, the same metadata elements that we saw over in the other window are here and available, along with the preview of that document. You also have the ability to perhaps sub-filter. So if you've got a long list of documents and you're not entirely sure which one you're after, not only do you have the relationships that we talked about that exist, so maybe you can dig into the relationships on that proposal specific to a certain Salesforce opportunity, but you can also just search within that view. So perhaps let's just look at all the proposals that were outstanding for, in this case, First Mountain Securities. So we're seeing the dialogue there of all of those results related to, in this case, the proposals for First Mountain Security. Again, I can choose one of those documents, see the not only the keywords, but the preview on the document as well. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is how we bring content into the solution. So in the M-Files dialog I showed earlier, it's as simple as a drag and drop, but within this particular view, we can actually just drag and drop content as well. And so I'll just grab a proposal on my desktop here. We're going to drag it over to the M-Files dialog. We're going to see that it's doing some processing. It's giving me a create document dialog. And what you're seeing happen here is obviously it's allowing me to perhaps choose the class and provide some of the property values. But as the dialog and the progress bar was running up there, our AI technology behind the scenes was automatically interrogating that document that I just brought in to determine if it has some information behind the scenes to provide suggestions of metadata content that could be associated to this document. In this case, we had a classification engine that was running that interrogated kind of the footprint of the document, the context, the layout, to all of the other document classes that we have inside of mFiles. We have what's called a classification, or effectively a document type, a category, if you will, that when our classification engine is enabled, we will automatically try to associate new content that's coming in to fit in one of those buckets. So as more content is brought into mFiles and categorized, we just get smarter on the end results. So in this case, you'll see mFiles is offering up to us the idea that this looks like and feels like and has the fingerprint of a proposal based upon all of the other proposals in the solution. So in this case, as an end user, I can just simply choose that dialog, and then mFiles prompts me for all of the other metadata that's configured and associated to proposals. Another value it could have picked up, but it didn't need to in this case because of the dialogue I'm in Salesforce, was the customer. So we'll automatically match words and phrases on documents to elements in your metadata card structure. But in this case, I drag and dropped it within the context of First Mountain Security. So mFiles was smart enough to not offer that up as a suggestion because it was a match to what it found on the document. The other element it offered up as a suggestion is we have enabled on this particular piece of content some intelligence services to seek out and determine if there's any personally identifiable information on the document. In this case, it says no. And that's just an enablement to be able to say, do we have any social security number patterns? Do we have anything that looks like it could be an address block associated to an individual? Do we see credit card number patterns on this document, or expiration dates that are maybe associated to those? And if it were to find those, we can flag them and perhaps put them in a workflow process for adding additional security, perhaps maybe passing it through a redaction engine. So a handful of things that can occur, but allows mFiles to take control and seek out and automate some of those elements to ensure that your content is secure. So with that, I'm going to wrap up at least the presentation portion of today. If you've got some interest in Salesforce, or with our Salesforce integration and or mFiles and integrating that into your solution, be sure to reach out to Matt and his team and get in touch with us. We're happy to get some dialogue covered there. I'm going to take a look and see if we've got any questions at the moment. If you have any, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or chat dialogue. And it looks like I've got a couple here. The first one that it's asking is, what kind of licensing is associated to mFiles? Is it per user? Is it concurrent usage? What are my options there? And that's a great question. From an mFiles perspective, we actually have what we call named users and concurrent users. So two different licensing models there, along with a solution that's read-only usage, which sometimes we see used in this particular Salesforce integration. So a named user would be associated to an individual user that's assigned to a single login account, and that's probably the most common one that we see inside of an mFiles license solution. Concurrent users are licenses that are shared amongst multiple users, allowing them to perhaps be logged in and shared amongst several different login accounts. It works great when you perhaps have a geographically dispersed employee population that aren't necessarily using mFiles all at the same time. And then the read-only user allows users to get in and find content, but not store content. So some of the details you saw today, where I just was in mFiles doing some searching and retrieval, that read-only license is going to allow us to do that, and also allow those users to participate in a workflow process. So perhaps make some decisions on workflow, which you'll see in this case. This particular document we're looking at is associated to a proposal workflow currently in an internal review state. If I was responsible for approving or passing that on, but not making changes to the content, a user would be able to, a read-only user would be able to do that. The next question I have is related to licensing of the Salesforce integration. Our Salesforce integration is associated to one of our editions of mFiles. We have kind of 4 different editions that we publish this solution into, levels, if you will. We've got core, we call the core bundle, the standard bundle, professional, and enterprise. The Salesforce integration is included in professional and up. So if you're at the professional level of M files, you can take advantage of this integration today. And then the last question I have is related to the security on content. Another great question that in the time allotted we didn't have a chance necessarily to get into the details on, but all security is handled on the document at a metadata level. So when I brought in that particular proposal that we saw a second ago, M-Files, you'll see down here, has in this particular case, a custom set of permissions that was applied to it. We can also see this over in the dialog that we were looking at earlier in the standard M-Files user interface. I'm just going to refresh that screen. But down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen for the permissions, you'll have a dialog that currently shows the effective permissions on that piece of content. Most of our content, when it's brought into M-Files, is automatically assigned a permissions template based upon the classification that the document is associated to. So in this case, proposal may be allowing access to sales managers and sales executives, or maybe the client manager and client executives in this particular case. And then perhaps based upon some property values that are tagged and associated to it, those permissions can be further modified and changed as you get deeper into the hierarchy. So in this case, we may say all account executives have read-only access to all proposals, but in the case of First Mountain Securities, we're going to give in addition, the account executive responsible for First Mountain Securities read and write access to that proposal. So we can layer security, again, starting perhaps at the class level and then at a property level. But as you see in this case, this one, because it's in a workflow process in an internal review state, some custom permissions have been applied. So we can affect security where it is and where it lay throughout a workflow process. And then a handful of other things that can be done there as well, in addition to just implicitly modifying them. So if you have a need to be very granular on this individual document and you have the permissions to do so, you can modify and change those permissions as necessary. So that's all the questions I see at the moment. If you have any others, see we're at time, go ahead and submit those, and Matt or myself will be in touch with you and answer those. And with that, Matt.
Jimmy, thanks so much. I appreciate the presentation today, as does our team. I wanted to ask a quick question just for some clarity and just the presentation. But the documents themselves, as they're in Salesforce, like can you just speak a little bit about that? And maybe you did, but I just wanted to drive that home, that the documents are not actually in Salesforce, and then some of that workflow activity that can happen within M-Files kind of behind the scenes. Can you hit on that? I think that's a powerful thing, and I just want to make sure that everyone listening is able to grasp that.
Absolutely. So again, when we're taking a look at content within Salesforce specifically, what you're seeing here is a glimpse into the hierarchy and the archive of content that is stored directly in M-Files. So when we drag and dropped content into this dialog, we weren't saving it specific to Salesforce. It was actually saving it directly over to M-Files. So M-Files is controlling and managing the security on that content behind the scenes, and we're providing an automatic glimpse and filtering into that content from a Salesforce perspective. Now, additionally, if you were in a scenario where perhaps you already had content stored and saved directly in Salesforce, we have the ability to reach into and pull those into an M-Files view so that they are searchable and retrievable within this dialog as well. And you may have saw some of that here. In this case, I'm seeing content stored directly in M-Files, but you'll see some that are referring to external specific repositories. In this case, I've got one in SharePoint, and I think some others may be out on shared network drives, that M-Files is contextually aware that they exist and providing access to them via our UI, and also providing access up to them inside of Salesforce. So again, it doesn't matter where your content's stored, M-Files is going to provide access to those wherever they may reside. And again, you'll see some examples of that here. All of the proposals happen to be directly in M-Files, but if I back out of that view, I'm going to see content that exists in SharePoint and shared network folders as well. And then I believe your last question was related to content that it was associated to workflow. So our workflow engine behind the scenes has got the ability to automate really any business-driven task, so business process-driven task. If you've got some sort of automation or you've got levels of approval that are required or level of review that is needed on documents, mFiles workflow is going to provide the ability to pass that content through those various workflow steps and states. Behind the scenes, there's a bit of a GUI that's built out, defining the process and the routes and the states that documents will exist in and pass throughout its life cycle. And you can make decisions on those documents and pass them through the various workflow states right from within this Salesforce UI and our integration here. So if you had a need to pass a document maybe out to DocuSign, as we see in this case, this is a service level agreement that is a contractor agreement that is in a contract life cycle that is out awaiting DocuSign signature. You would be able to see the current state of that signing process right from within the Salesforce user interface here, but just taking a look down at the bottom right-hand corner, seeing that this one is sent out to DocuSign, waiting on a digital signature from the user that it was sent to.
Jimmy,
Did that kind of cover?
Oh, absolutely, man. I was jumping in there. That's exactly it. One of the things that I love about the mFiles and Salesforce integration and why we've talked about it powering Salesforce is exactly what you're showing on this screen. It's the Salesforce interface with mFiles and the power of the document management, enterprise content management solution that it is. And it is all in kind of one pane of glass, which is terrific. The rules and regulations around the organizational steps, of a proposal coming in, and then the steps of how that moves in the organization. Even if folks don't have access to Salesforce, they could still participate, like you mentioned, in the workflow. And I think that's a really powerful thing. Jimmy, thank you so much for your presentation today. Jimmy, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think we're all set.
All right, everybody. Thank you so. Yeah, Jimmy, thank you. Appreciate mFiles and the work that we're doing together, and all of our clients out there. We appreciate you as well. If there's an interest in looking more at the mFiles solution for Salesforce or mFiles in general, please don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager. Have a wonderful morning. Thanks for joining.